Okay, it's 6:05, so let's go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to Charities Housing. And if you folks wouldn't mind just kind of super summarizing where we left off at the last community meeting and the purpose of this meeting this evening.
Okay, so this is Joe Head with Charities Housing, and Hai Nguyen, the project manager for our project, is with us, and also Lisa Caldwell, who handles the management of all of our projects that are in operation. And at the last meeting, there were a number of questions that needed some more explanation, and they come under three basic headings: a discussion of how we manage properties, the security checks and oversight we provide, both for the safety of our own tenants and also those of our neighbors. And Lisa will be leading that discussion. And she will cover as part of that discussion a response to Jamie Lau's email from earlier this week, getting into some specifics on how we handle issues relative to registries under Megan's Law or Jessica's Law, which have to do with sexual crimes issues. The second thing we will review is the costs for underground parking and what would be the viability of our project if we went to one level of underground parking, which would lower the building height from a 5-story to a 4-story building. And then the third item we will do tonight is we will show you some new shadow data, specifically highlighting where maximum and minimum shadowing occurs during various times throughout the year. And thanks, Hai, for those. That's the basic agenda for this evening. And I'll turn the first part of the meeting over to Lisa, who is our Director of Property Management, and she will provide some information, and she will answer questions on the property management portion. Let me say before we get started that Lisa's area of property management does not include the properties that we have under development review, so that the issues that the neighborhood is presented to charities relative to our operation of the building from the time we purchased it until now is not under Lisa's purview. Those issues are addressed to Hai and myself. So, and we understand there's been problems with those areas, but Lisa can't add any direction to that because it's basically Hai and myself and some others on our team that were the focus of decisions, right or wrong, relative to the property management issues on the site to date. So Lisa, with that caveat, I'll let you take over and introduce.
Thank you. Hi, all. I can't see who's all on, but thank you all for joining. So I think I'll give a brief overview and then we'll go into the questions. My understanding is previously there was maybe some questions on how we process applications and admit people into our properties. So I just wanted a quick overview to let everyone know that there is processes. We have everyone normally for all of our new properties ongoing, we create wait lists. We open a wait list and people get onto this wait list. And then once the property opens, we start outreaching the wait list and qualifying and interviewing and qualifying the applicants that way. So once they go through the interview process, which include, we meet with them, we collect all the data, we run a credit check, an eviction check, and a background check. A criminal background check. And so there's three processes they meet first with the property manager who is on site, lives on site, and handles the day-to-day operations of the site. And then after that's reviewed, we have what we call a regional manager that oversees a certain portfolio, number of other properties, and that staff. So when we go through a lease up or an application process, it starts at the site. They do the interview. They run run all of our credit check, eviction check, background check, make sure they income qualify, verify their landlords previous, and then that goes to the regional manager who reviews that as well, checks off on everything, signed, make sure it meets all of our tenant selection criteria. And then it goes to our compliance department. So we have a compliance department. They check the income calculations. They make sure they're reviewing all of the background checks, again, making sure that they meet all the criteria that we have outlined for this specific property. So that's it in an overview. I'm sure there's multiple questions related to that we can take. And then the next thing before I take questions, I just wanted to get into the email that we received in regards to registered sex offenders. I just wanted to point out that, and anyone can look at this, it's, if they want to write it down, and I can repeat it again, or we can drop it in a notes section. They can look at this. It's the Penal Code 290.46. And so this is basically Megan's Law. I don't know how familiar everyone is with this, but it was established in 1996. And it's a database where people who need to register for offenses need to register online. And it's a database, and you can type in your address and you can search it this way. I wanted to point out that I know there was some concerns about how they get into properties. We have, if they're at our properties. The state prohibits us from denying anyone based on being on this registry. So I just want to let you know that the law states that sex offender, I'm reading this too because I have my notes, so I just want to make sure I get it right. The law states that sex offenders may not be denied for housing, employment, insurance, etc. So I just wanted to, point that out, and that we can't just simply deny someone to do that. I also want to point out that for certain properties, we cannot search and do it. We can't go to Megan's Law or a registry and search them ourselves. We can't do that. We can get fined. A matter of fact, neighbors can actually get fined if they find out and go onto these websites and harass the neighbor. They can get fined up to $25,000. So that being said, that's how sometimes they can end up on properties that we manage and everyone else manages. I mean, this happens not just for affordable housing. These are your bigger property management companies as well. This happens they have to follow the same rules. It's the state rules. So what happens is, and then once someone gets in, if we feel that, there's a danger or something's happening, like everyone else, we would recall them, report them. And it's the police department's responsibility to look into it, see if they're violating any of the restrictions, because every case is different. There's different tiers. It goes from level 1, stage, I think it's tier 1 up to, stage tier 5. So depending on the tier they're at, it all ranges of how it's done. But all we can do is report it to the police department, and then they take it from there. And so that was the overview of that. And I think we want to open it up for questions.
Lisa, can you clarify that there are people on, or verify that my understanding is correct, that there are people on the list or the registration that have not been convicted, isn't it? And if they've not been convicted, they would not show up on our check of their criminal background, but if they had been convicted, they would show up on the check of our criminal background.
Correct. Depending on, yes, correct. So our criminal background check picks up, if you've been arrested, so it's a misdemeanor, a felony, anything like that. If you've actually been arrested and convicted, if many times that there's cases, I know that when you hear like the sex offender registry everywhere, it's alarming. I agree it is, but many times there's things we don't know, and that they plea out, they don't get convicted, they don't do this, but they agree to register in order to not have to do other things, or it's part of the agreement. So not everyone is convicted when they have to register. And so that's when, if we do a criminal background check, if they have not been convicted or charged with a crime, it will not show up on our criminal background check.
And in terms of the registry, Lisa, how long would a name be on the list for?
It depends on the tier they're at. So for example, the one example that we got, we looked into it and they're tier 1. So that's 10 years. So they would have to register for 10 years. And then after 10 years, they would no longer need to register.
But in terms of the search, we won't be able to search for how long?
No, our criminal background checks go, okay, I'm sorry. Our criminal background checks look back a 7-year look back.
Okay. All right, with that, I do see 2 hands as raised for in this topic. And so first is Jamie. Please please unmute yourself.
Oh, hi. This is Jamie. So you're saying that if you find individual have a sex offense history, you may admit them, but that's conflicts with what I found on your Susie B application.
Yeah, so
No.
let me, I'm sorry, go ahead. If I don't want to cut you off, go ahead. Did you have more?
It says, it specifically said that I think on page, let me see, page 2, it said the state's offender registry will be checked. Applicants will be disqualified for tenancy if any household member is listed as registered sex offender.
Yes, and that, so I forgot to mention that for units and properties that have federal subsidies funding. So for example, I don't know how familiar you're all with, if they have a voucher, that they will be checked. So the only time that we can check the system and it goes through that check is as if a tenant has, or the property has federal funds, a subsidy.
So if it has federal fund, let's say like Section 8, right?
Correct.
It will be checked for registry.
Correct.
If not, you don't check that.
Correct.
So the person in question I have sent to you, does he fall on the case where he had a voucher?
I can't share any personal information about this particular person, but I can tell you that if they're living in our property, if they had a voucher, they wouldn't be living at our property.
So that he doesn't have a voucher. Okay. And you cannot share any more information about, and when you screen him, you guys have not, was not looked into because he's not using a voucher.
Yeah, so this particular case, the property you're talking about, we took over management of it in 2017. This tenant moved into that property in 2008. So when we inherited the property, that tenant was already in place.
Okay.
So that's...
Okay, so he actually made the offense after he moved in. After he moved in.
So in those situations, we would not know unless someone brought it to our attention or if somebody else was concerned, they can contact the local police department, report the information, and the police department will look into it to see if that person is indeed violating any of the restrictions placed upon them in their particular case. Okay. I was just curious, like, did he do this after he moved in? I understand that if he moved in, you cannot check every applicant every year for their criminal offense. I mean, no one does that. Okay, so I just want to know. I understand. Thank you. I understand. Thanks. All right. Do you guys not know about this until I told you, or like about this person? Again, I can't disclose. I know all of our tenants have their privacy rights, so I can't disclose any of that stuff. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Lisa, can you please help clarify whether this is a typical market rate or affordable housing complex? Does all these rights and statutes apply across the board?
So in this particular case, when it comes to sex offenders, yes, because it's a state requirement. I will tell you that affordable housing, and I've worked at a housing authority prior to joining Charities Housing, goes beyond. So if you look at your Irvine companies, they're only doing credit checks for their tenants to move in. We do a credit check, an eviction check, and a criminal background check. So your normal practice is not to do that in the open market. our market rate, I guess you could call that. So when we do affordable housing, and everywhere I've worked, I've been in affordable housing management for 20 plus years. Everywhere that I've worked that has affordable housing takes that extra step and does criminal background checks.
Thank you, Lisa. Jamie, do you have any follow-up, or shall I move on to?
I have other questions, but I will raise my hand later. I'll let other persons speak.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, we have Sunil.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And I have a follow-up question, basically. Fundamentally, what you are saying that you won't be able to do anything as a property manager, and we have to complain it to police, but do you even at least evict that person after that complaint, or you still keep that person?
It depends. So it depends, right? So if they're reported to the police and then they're violating, the police show up and remove them and they're arrested, then that's a different story. And it depends on what happened, if they got arrested on our property. We manage by the lease. So we would look at it that way. But if the police show up and they find they're doing nothing wrong, we can't. And I would encourage people to read that, because we can actually get fined for evicting them just by finding out they live there.
So follow-up question is, why was this information not shared with us earlier? Shouldn't you update these details in written on the website now with your application now?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. What should we tell you about beforehand or update?
In your application, it says there will be criminal background check done and everything will be done like as if like all rosy things, but you clearly are missing an important thing here. So shouldn't you update this in writing on the website?
We will update it to say that it's for federal fund. We will update it so it indicates that specifically it's for units or properties that have federal subsidies.
I feel like we are being misled here. So it's better that you being transparent. Based on the other experience also, transparency is a key issue with charities housing.
So Neil, this is Joe. Let me jump in for a second. On the frequently asked questions,
there also you have misled on a couple of things, that you have outreached to the community members in the past in 2020, but I am the next door neighbor to you. I never heard about you in 2020. It was like all hidden. So I'm just letting you know. Okay.
But if you refer to page 2 in our frequently asked questions, you'll see that we disclose that we do a criminal background check, and if a crime of a sex nature shows up in the criminal background check, that's something we can deal with. It's just the registry list that is not automatic, because people are on the registry list without having been convicted.
See, we have young kids here living with us. We are raising kids here. And you are now telling us that it is not part of the list and not part of the checks. So this is shameful.
I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, I don't have any other question at this moment.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other comments relating to or questions relating to property management?
Do we want to go on to the underground parking issue?
Sure. Lisa, I think that concludes your portion. Yeah. Please feel free. If not, I understand.
Yeah, no, thank you. And again, if anything comes out after and we need you to follow up, I'll be happy to provide information you guys can send out to the group.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, can you put up the graphic on the building, which will lead into our discussion on the...
Sure, Joe, 1 second. Can you all see my screen?
We can, but it still has Lisa's, doesn't have the graphic of the first floor level.
Here we go.
There we go, okay. So I'll introduce kind of the broad spectrum of analysis that we do, in looking to do parking in an underground level, the portions of let me back up just a second. This shows the first floor, the ground level floor, not an underground level floor, for the building as we proposed. And part of the functions in that building are the offices for the management of it, are community room, bike storage. There's a whole series of things, laundry area. There's a whole series of elements at that ground floor level that if you take the parking and put it underground, those portions of the publicly or jointly community-based activity still needs to stay at the ground level. So there's not an automatic use of all the space at the ground level. That being said, the construction of a building that has underground parking is more complex and therefore more expensive. The more complex part of it is that the area must be excavated sufficient to hold the parking uses that are anticipated and any other mechanical uses that need to be activated in the same area. Since this will be 10 to 12 feet deep in the ground, there's concrete walls need to be constructed that act as retaining walls for the earth around them and are a structural strong point in the safety of the building, and that it keeps the earth from surrounding that open space where the parking would be from collapsing in or negatively affecting the safety of the building in a seismic event. The walls then also transfer through columns the load of the building above them. There's about a 4-month additional construction cycle to create the walls, the concrete and steel reinforced walls at the ground level, and to carry the columns through those walls all the way down to their foundations in the earth. In underground construction, especially in the city of Santa Clara, San Jose, and basically in Silicon Valley, the water table runs higher than it does in many areas of the state. And in our case here, it's about 7 or 8 feet down. So as part of the construction issue is the waterproofing system has to be very robust, and a pumping system has to be installed to counter any kind of water intrusion that would be detrimental to the structural event. If any of you followed some of the problems in the collapsed building in Florida, you'll notice a recall from that reporting that much of the problem started in the underground garage area. So the underground garages, any underground structure, needs to be very carefully and robustly constructed. Because of the costs, and we'll talk to you about them in just a moment, typically most builders, for-profit or affordable, in the city of Santa Clara, as the city pointed out last time, do not use an underground structure for parking. Since the critique that the community was offering basically indicated that there was no community support from the people attending the community meetings we held beyond a 2-story building, and the 2-story building does not provide anywhere near enough units to support underground parking. We went ahead and designed the building in the fashion you see it now. We did remove 1 story from the building from 6 to 5, but we kept the parking at the grade level. And I guess one of the questions I'd like to get some input on after Hai goes through some of the impacts and costs and unit count, et cetera, is there a community consensus out there that if we were a 4-story rather than a 5-story building, that we would receive community support? And with that, Hai, I'll let you turn it over to you, and you can go through some of the construction the cost issues, and then we'll open for questions.
Thank you, Joe. So the overall impact is essentially, the time and the cost, as Joe sort of outlined it, approximately 4 months of added construction time. And at this juncture, in terms of our analysis along with our general contractor, it's estimated at $5.5 million for additional construction costs. What that means is that there will be, in terms of in terms of per unit cost here at 108 units, that will approximately add on approximately $50,000 per unit. But if you were to measure versus the number of parking units, which in this garage will hold about 50 parking spaces or so, and $5.5 million, you can easily do the math. That comes out to about $100,000 per parking space. And which is frankly why you don't see many developers, not just in the city of Santa Clara, but elsewhere, do not build underground parking. And as Debbie said previously, that is far in between in terms of development, new developments that you see underground parking. And as Joe mentioned, there will be some of these programmatic space, including bike parking, laundry, community rooms and such. Those will have an impact on the number of units. And at this juncture, taking it down from reducing one level, even though it's only 4-story, we will have to eliminate 10 units at that stage. And with the lower unit count and the higher construction cost, that means it will be a drastic reduction to our project competitiveness in terms of tax credit financing. And the way that tax credit financing competes from one project to the next throughout the entire state is based on per unit cost. And so by adding 5.5 million and spreading across approximately 100 units, that give us a more disadvantaged position in terms of being able to fund this project overall. And in terms of the parking numbers, number of parking spaces, as you can see here, sort of highlighted in purple, this parking entrance will need to have a ramp. And with a ramp, there will certainly be loss of approximately 4 or 5 parking spaces due to the nature of, this is the ramp. So it will, again, now we're down to approximately 45 parking spaces just within this lower parking garage area. And so that means that, the per parking space cost is now up to $110,000 per parking space, which is really unheard of. It used to be that the rule of thumb to build parking spaces is about $30,000 per parking space. And now we're, if we were to build underground, we're looking at potentially almost tripling that cost. So it puts us in a much more disadvantaged place to build. Joe, do you have any final comments on this?
No, I think we should take questions and see if that helps clarification.
Will do. The first person I see raising hand is Sunil.
Yeah, hello. So again, so one question, why not you are building 2-story building? Again, you are circling back to 4-story, and how much of your money you are seeking for this project is from taxpayer money? Is it 100%, or are you not putting any money from your side? And the other thing is, if you put 2-story building, there will be obviously less units, and it will be parking issue will not be there. And also it will be easier for everyone in the neighborhood, like their quality of life will not go down. So I am not sure why you are insisting to be building 100+ unit all the time. Like, I think you are not understanding our feedback on this. So that's my suggestion. So.
Okay, Sunil, I think the for us to compete for the financing that we require from both the county and the state level, there needs to be a sufficient number of units in order to have the unit cost. There needs to be a sufficient number of units to compete, and that typically the funders want to see a minimum number of units per acre on a site. A two-story building would not allow us to put enough units on the site to compete in the state level. And if we tried to come in with a lower number of units, we would not be successful and the project couldn't be built.
So, but this is a very small lot, you understand, and it is already crowded neighborhood here. So if this site is not suitable for huge number of units that you are thinking, then why not move the project to somewhere else?
We believe in the study we did before we entered into an agreement to purchase the site, and it's still our very firm belief that the site itself is in a really outstanding area to serve the clientele that we would serve, because it is near transportation. It is near.
Yeah, yes, that I understand your marketing, but it will be at the cost of existing people who are living here. They will suffer a lot. You are not going to live here. It will be, you will just build it and go away, right? It's about the people who are already living here. It's not about you.
I understand that, but we work with or take a look at what the current type of building that's allowed on the site now, and the current zoning and general plan on this site is for a commercial type of development that without any kind of additional processing or activity like we're going through now in our discussion, would be a 100-foot building, which is roughly an 8 to 10 story commercial building, which is a higher building than we're proposing in a more intense use.
It doesn't mean if you're allowed to build it that you will be able to build it about that 100 feet. That argument is like, I won't consider it seriously, that about 100-foot building you can create. Yes, I understand that is a in some way, if it's planning department allows it. But the thing is, this is again, even this is for the planning department. If this neighborhood is already congested and we are already seeing quality of life going down over past many years because of recent housing projects completed, why not find out better sites for this project, like where you want to build 100 units and you are also not coming up with the right number of parking. You're coming up with like 0.7 per unit parking, not even like 1 parking per bedroom. So
thank you. I think we've agreed to disagree.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
The next person we have is Sean Reese.
Hi, good evening. My name's Sean Reese, and I'm an organizer for the NorCal Carpenters Union. I'd like to speak about the development side of this project in terms of the need for labor standards. I hope you take 3 things into consideration, being apprenticeship, healthcare, and local hires. Construction apprenticeship programs are a proven escalator to the middle class, training tens of thousands of California residents every year at zero cost to the taxpayers. And in terms of healthcare, construction workers, particularly those not represented by a union, are much more likely to lack healthcare and rely on government safety net programs. The lack of stable healthcare is a main factor that keeps workers away from the industry, leading to labor shortages that we are seeing in residential construction. Policies that require contractors to offer their workers family healthcare will raise the standards in the construction industry, while also ensuring that the employers who do offer healthcare can compete on a level playing field. And as far as local hire goes, local hire policies help ensure that the new development benefits all members of the community, right? Local hire policies can reduce burdens on an already overtaxed infrastructure. And as more and more construction workers are forced into these mega communities, local hire policies can help bring stability to families and the community, ensuring workers can spend time with their families and participate in civic and community life. instead of spending 4+ hours per day in traffic.
Thank you, Sean. We certainly understand and agree with the goals you're setting out. And I can, while we have not made a final agreement on who will be our general contractor on this job, the contractor we work with to develop the costs that we mentioned just recently, they are a signatory with the carpenters.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Next person we have to talk is Kong. I apologize if I did not say this correctly, but last name's Tang.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question about how do you limit the number of vehicles your tenants, they have only 72 parking spaces. How are you going to limit the number of parking spaces? How many cars they are going to have, and how are you going to assign those parking spaces to 100 more units?
So Mr. Tang, the residents in an affordable project typically use less cars for transportation than the public at large. And I think what the recommendation we will make, or the offer we will make to mitigate any kind of additional parking on the street that might occur from a project, is that we are prepared to enter into an agreement with the city of Santa Clara for a parking district, which causes a fee to be paid for each unit. And that our perspective suggestion is that our tenants, if they do street parking, will only be allowed to park on Lincoln and East Civic Center, which the city's traffic study a couple of years ago shows is not impacted in the evening hours or on weekends, and therefore would not be a negative impact on any existing tenancies along West Civic Center.
I mean, do you have data supporting that the average number of cars per unit will only be like 0.7 for this kind of apartments?
Well,
or
yeah, for instance, a quarter of our apartments are studios, which is typically occupied by only one person, and typically that person uses public transportation. So yes, there is data there. We have shared it in previous meetings. We would share it in the future, but there's been a concern by the community of not trusting our data, and therefore we developed a proposal so that even if the parking ratios are different than we expect, that the street parking will not impact existing residents along West Civic Center, because by definition, our tenants would be allowed to park only on areas other than West Civic Center.
And my point is that your tenants might not be able to find a parking space if only like 72 slots are provided. Well, that limit their quality of life as well.
Yeah, I might refer you to the parking study done by the city of Santa Clara, and I believe 2019, which shows that in the evening hours and on the weekends, the areas I mentioned along Lincoln and East Civic Center, which is the street on our east side and the street going perpendicular on our east side, there's ample street parking in those hours on those streets. And in fact, we changed the entrance to our building, parking entrance to our building. We put over half the parking entrance on the Lincoln side just to further reduce traffic impact on West Civic Center. So we think we have a solution, and the traffic study that the city did will inform the discussion at the Planning Commission and the council.
And by the public transportation, you mean the bus stop near here? Because there is no like Caltrain or any other public transportation near this area.
Well,
and the bus is not very frequent, in my understanding. Why you think it's very convenient for the tenants to take public transportation?
I think, why don't you answer the specifics on the bus issues, because there's several routes within a block to 2 blocks walking distance.
That's correct, Joe. Mr. Tang, there are 2 major bus stops. One is in the corner of El Camino and Scott. It serves 2 major lines. One's 22 and another is a rapid line, which has less frequent stops, but it goes fast, obviously it's frequent. It's 522 is a line, and both of which connects to the Palo Alto Transportation Center, as well as the San Jose Diridon station, the other major hub, as well as down the road on Santa Clara, the Santa Clara Transportation Hub, and also being able to access just from that corner, folks should be able to transfer to light rails and the VTA light rail systems, as well as accessing the Caltrains and being able to travel regionally. Aside from that specific corner at Scott and El Camino, on the corner of Warburton and Monroe, there are also 2 additional bus lines that make stops at that corner, and they too, those 2 lines also allow access for riders to access other major hubs, such as the Santa Clara Transit Center, the San Jose Diridon Station, as well as the Palo Alto Transit Center.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tang. Next, we have Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
Hello. Hi. I was accidentally got removed from the meeting for some reason earlier. So please don't remove me after I'm talking.
No problem. I apologize.
So you have to actually, after you remove someone from a meeting, you have to sign in with a different email. So that's what I did. Anyways, I want to, actually, this is a question for Debbie. Since Joe have kept mentioning that this zone can allow 100 feet tall building without a community consent, like we don't have to have any input for that. If it's allowed, it can be built. Can you tell me the process for, let's say Charities Housing is going to build 100 feet tall commercial building instead of a 60 feet tall residential? What would be the process involved? Do they need to go through a development review hearing? Do they need to do a environmental review report? So what are the process involved if they're going to build, let's say, 100 feet tall building?
Was the property is zoned general office, so that allows varied commercial uses. But primarily office uses. So when we're talking about commercial, we're really talking about office primarily. The development standards for that zoning district allow up to 100 feet and have established setback requirements and parking requirements. So if the proposal is consistent with the development standards and doesn't require any discretionary action, such as a variance to exceed building height or lot coverage, or a reduction in parking, or a use permit, excuse me, and doesn't require planning commission or city council action. There's no rezoning of the property, no general plan amendment like this particular application. It would only go to development review hearing. And
Okay.
that would, and it as a project, it is subject to CEQA, so there would be an environmental review, but it would be reviewed, through objective standards. So the design we would be looking at in conformance with general plan policies, as we are doing with all projects. So in that way, it's no different. But again, if there's no discretionary action, it's just a development review hearing.
Okay, so it will still have to go through CEQA. Do you think 100 feet tall building will be a significant impact to the neighborhood?
Again, the zoning allows for up to 100 feet. So that is an established standard. So if it does not have significant environmental impacts and that are not mitigated, there's a process by which that is examined, whether statement of overriding considerations is prepared and adopted. But again, the whole project would be looked at in terms of objective standards and does it meet the goals of the general plan.
But it was still subject to public comments, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But that does not necessitate that it would be extremely modified in a way, again, because it would have to be objective standards. If it met the objective standards, it would be allowed to be constructed.
Okay, so the development review hearing will still have a voting, right? Between the committees, if it will have to go through them. Is it similar to city council? Like you still have to, public still can submit
yes, it is a public process, and there would be a community meeting for a particular project like this, that given that the location of the proposal. So yes, we'd be doing a community meeting like we're doing now. We'd be taking community input. We always try to achieve for the best design possible. That is always the intent. So that it would read, that any potential impacts are avoided or reduced to a less than significant level. But
so let me sum it up. So even though it allows for 100 feet building, commercial building, it doesn't necessarily mean that it can be done or even feasible. So, I mean, my point is that even though it can be built 100 feet, commercial building, doesn't mean that it can be done. You still need to have public input at the development review hearing. I just want to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next, we have Sus Jane.
Yes, thank you. I heard there was some concerns about whether there's any data on whether affordable housing projects need less parking. And I refer people to the greentrip.org database.greentrip.org. And they have a number of affordable housing projects. One that I'm looking here is the Lenson Square Apartments. It's 88 units, and it was actually built with 142 parking spots, but only 77 of them are being used when they do parking reviews. That means that the developer spent $3 million extra for parking that they didn't need. These units are at 64 of the units are at 51 to 60% of AMI, and 24 of the units are at 31 to 50% of AMI. So if you're looking for data, I just want to tell people that you can find plenty of data at greentrip.org.
Thank you for that, Suz. Next, we have Sunil. Sunil, are you there with us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for the gentleman that just spoke. So you have data that's showing us some rosy scenarios, but is it really covering all data, or you are just cherry-picked some data and put it on the website?
This is not my data. You can look at the data for yourself.
Yeah, but
San Jose City Council actually just approved basically near transit, almost no parking. There are plenty of places in Berkeley and other places that have zero parking buildings.
So here we don't have light rail or here we don't have any light rail or any other thing.
We have the 522 and the 22, which have 15-minute headways. Those are considered by the state to be high quality transit. The buses come every 15 minutes.
Okay, I'll check that up, but sounds like with all these projects, a lot of times you just see the cherry picked data from here and there, and a lot of studies are just funded for the people who are building these kind of projects. And
well, go to Green Trips. You'll see plenty of projects near transit that have.
I assume they're not cherry picked. Okay, so that's what my question is. They're not cherry picked.
Look for yourself. Okay. And San Jose City Council just approved much less parking for all of their projects near transit.
Thank you for your clarification. Next, we have Kayhan.
Yes, I wanted to make a comment. I understand Mr. Jain is one of our council people, and my comment is with respect to data. We have local data about 2.5 years of congestion along our streets here and now. We're not talking about some, distant property in San Jose. We are just relying on local data. Anybody who tries to park their car in our neighborhood on the street at night, there's no parking spot. There's not a single parking spot. My question is, why do you have to resort to some far-off data, which is particular to a different neighborhood, when you have on the ground practical data, experiential data here and now? I mean, all of this is sort of evading the issue. And I find that somewhat misleading. When you have data here, why do you resort to far-off data and statistics that are completely irrelevant? This is now and here. Has anybody, one of you, tried to walk around finding a parking spot? If one of our homes is not able to, use their parking space, parking driveway because of whatever reason, because there might be a construction project, there must be something going on in the street that requires them to park their car in the street, they have to go round and round. And if you're an elderly person, you cannot do that. So I don't really understand why we're talking about data when there's actual data and experience on the spot, and we are not listening to what people in the neighborhood are telling you. You're not hearing us. We are telling you there's no parking spots here. Mr. Jain, with all due respect, would you please spend a full week monitoring the neighborhood parking in our neighborhood on Lincoln along Civic Center Drive, and then construct your own data, and we can sit and talk about it rather than quoting us, some website? I don't think that would be fair, a fair way of adjudicating this matter. And I would expect a higher standard from Charities Housing in terms of listening to us. And that brings me to my next question. This is our 4th meeting. Are your wall-to-wall neighbors, Mr. Jain is here, so I'm going to say it out loud. You neglected us for 13 months. You refused to put up a fence around your property to basically secure us. We had homeless people. We had petty theft and crime. I had a dumpster, an RV van, dump their shit, their toilet tank, within 12 yards of my home. I'm sure Mr. Jain would not accept that from a charity as a city council person. It's a reputational issue. We tried out to reach to charity housing, whom we didn't know who they are. They never responded. 13 months we suffered. And as a result of that incident, criminal incident, they put up a fence. That's their track record in terms of addressing their wall-to-wall neighbors. Now, we raised another issue, the ones that are living next to this property. We asked repeatedly, why don't you block access along our property line from Civic Center Drive? I haven't heard one word being said. Instead, you're kind of diverting to these easier issues, reaching out to the farther community. You're just neglecting your next door, and you think you can divide us by reaching out to the broader neighborhood. I honestly haven't heard a word from you about the track record. I haven't heard a word about why you're not willing to. I'm looking at the map of this building. Why can't you put a driveway along the church property line where there's nobody living there? Why can't you not do that? Why can't you put the parking along Civic, along Lincoln? There's so much lot space here. You want to put your parking right along our house where there's an alley, and we experienced people dumping there, using that as a bathroom. It's just not very safe. There's going to be fire trucks running their engines at odd hours right next to our homes. Our bedrooms are, facing that yard of yours. There's going to be traffic there. Paying attention, who's listening to us? Are you listening?
Mr. Sinai.
Here's some answers, Mr. Head. This is the 4th meeting we're having. 2 hours every meeting. Okay, we've been respectful. We have not received responses from you.
I'm going to interject. Kihan, this meeting is specifically to discuss parking, light and shadow, and management.
Yes,
I'd like to stay focused on those.
You can
Kihan,
silence us by picking your agenda.
I would like to keep to the topics. You've had an opportunity at the last 3 meetings to state the issues that you're very concerned about, which I appreciate. You have additional opportunities to do that at Planning Commission and City Council. I'd like to stay on subject. I'm sure those that are in attendance would like to hear the rest of the discussion. So if we could move forward, please. There are a number of reasons why the site plan is the way it is, which we will get into at Planning Commission, but this is not a pointed discussion, an accusatory discussion. This is to share information and for you to ask questions.
Well,
would you like to proceed?
Why can we not answer that question here
I would like
now?
I would like to say that I'm happy to meet with anybody. You can contact me through my city email, and I would be happy to sit down with anybody. The reason why I talked about the Green Trips data is because those are affordable housing projects, and the data shows that affordable housing projects need less parking. That's the only point of bringing that up.
And thank you very much, Mr. Jain, for that clarification. My only question that remains unanswered, 4th time now, is why can we not secure access or block access from along this side of our property line? That's one of the most critical issues facing our neighbors. And I think it deserves an answer. So if you're asking me to wait, basically I'm having no choice. We will have to wait. And I apologize if I sound not very happy, but that's a fact. I'm not alone. There are many people in this neighborhood who are not happy.
Mr. Sinai, if it's helpful to you, I would be more than happy to have a meeting with you and whomever you wish to invite, bring the plans and go over again why we did the site plan that we're doing. We could do it on site in person, outdoors would be comfortable for me. Whatever venue would be helpful. I think we will might end up in disagreement, but I will elaborate for you as best I can all the reasons why the site plan is balanced the way it is. And you can contact me. The city has my email, and are we on? If we're not, we can put it in the chat before the end of the meeting. I'll be happy to meet with you in any group you want prior to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Kehan and Suds, for your comments. As per Debbie's direction, we shall move on to the next topic. And that would be shadow studies.
I'll give a brief introduction, but this is primarily the exhibit you put together here, which is pretty interesting. What you'll be seeing here is we've done a study which shows the maximum amount of shadow cast by our proposed building and the point at which no shadow is cast by our proposed building at 4 different times of the year: the winter and the summer solstice, and then the 2 spring fall equinoxes. Some of the graphics are a little small to read, or at least for me, and Hai will lead you through verbally what you're looking at. So we hope this will be helpful for you to understand the shadow issue.
So what you're seeing on the screen here is on the left side is the existing building, this 2-story office building that is approximately 10 feet away from the property line of the western property line adjacent to single family homes. And then on the right side, it is the proposed building or affordable housing 5-story building that is nearly 67 feet, about 67 feet away from the western property line. So this here is the first. I'll run through the animations. It's very quick, but then also I can slow down and pause it and show you a more zoom in version of what the model shows. So on the left side here, in the spring and fall equinox of the existing building, the sun, it progresses throughout the day here. It usually starts out at about 7 in the morning during the fall and spring. And that's when it casts a larger shadow onto these homes here. And approximately at about, and you can see a little bit here, still this 2-story building casting shadow on these homes up until about, and that shadow stops casting at approximately 11 a.m. I can zoom in a little bit more here. If you see here, the shadow down here, it's a little bit difficult to see, but it leaves, the single family homes at approximately 11 a.m. in the cases of spring and fall equinox. And on the right side, I will quickly play it. That's a quick animation from throughout the day of the sun. And at the beginning of the day, the sun relatively rises in spring and fall at approximately 7 a.m. And as it progresses, sort of hour by hour, the sun, the shadow stops casting from our building or proposed building to the neighboring single family homes at approximately 9:45 or 10 a.m. here in this instance. I can zoom in a little bit more for those who are, here we go. The shadow line here, it leaves the single family homes at approximately 10 a.m. So this is so what this is showing is that on a 5-story building that is 67 feet away, this shadow stops casting on the neighboring single family homes at approximately 10 a.m. Whereas on a 2-story office building that's approximately 10 feet away from the property line, the shadow stops casting at 11 a.m. So it's a little bit later, meaning, there will be, these homes are currently a little more impacted, whereas the proposed building, the shadows, the model suggests that the shadow would stop casting approximately 10 a.m. So that is the spring and fall equinox condition. The next we like to look at is the winter solstice. To me, this would probably be the worst case scenario, simply because the winter daylight is it's more impactful in terms of a shadow. With less daylight and a lower angle sun, the impact will likely last a little bit longer. So we can sort of go through the existing condition again pretty quickly. We can play that again. There. So what I'd like to point out is that, again, the sun starts out around approximately 7 a.m. And if we can see this sort of sun shading here, it shades approximately 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 buildings. Let's see. As you can see here, approximately here is when the shadow stops to casting on the neighbors, approximately 11 a.m. And this is the existing, again, 2-story building that's about 10 feet away from the property line, whereas the proposed building, 5-story, but 67 feet away from the property line. What we can show here again is, it starts rising at 7 a.m. approximately, and the shadow would stop casting on the neighboring property at approximately 10 a.m. Here we go again. At 10 a.m., the 5-story building stops casting at approximately 10 a.m. And then lastly, we have the summer condition, which I believe would be the best case scenario, simply because the sun is higher. This is the existing condition. I'll play again. And I'd like to show here is the sun is out a little bit earlier at approximately 6 a.m. And throughout the morning, it will continue to cast. The current 2-story building will continue to cast until approximately at this juncture, until approximately 11 a.m. And I will, here, 11 a.m. timestamp. That's when the shadows begins to vacate, casting on the neighboring single-family homes. And on the proposed model, this is what it looks like throughout the day. I'll play again. And as you can see, again, the sun starts a little bit earlier in the summertime, around 6 a.m. And the new building, proposed building, would continue to project a shadow casting onto the neighboring building up until approximately 9 a.m. And I will enlarge that for your viewing. 9 a.m. timestamp. And here we have no longer shadow casting onto the neighboring building. So in summary, throughout the year, what is showing is that the worst, the longest shadow that's casting throughout the whole entire year is, the worst case would be up until 10 a.m. in the morning. That would be the summary. I see 2 hands up. Joe, do you have anything else to add before we start taking questions?
No, you go right ahead. Sorry.
Sunil, you're up first.
Yeah, are you going to publish this video? Yeah, because we want to verify. Because last time we couldn't really trust the data that you published, so we would like to verify.
Would you like for us to publish it? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Sure.
And the other thing is more question regarding privacy. How many windows will be there facing single-family homes on the buildings?
As of
Can
right
you
now,
pull up our western elevation high?
yes, I'll try to look for it. 1 second. Sunil, to answer your question, as of right now, we have approximately 8 windows facing the single family homes. Typically, for these windows, what we typically do is we provide a frosted glass or a translucent type of glass to provide transparency on both sides. And then what you're seeing here on this side is essentially just the stairs. It's not directly of the units looking onto the adjacent lot.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I see Kayhan's hand.
Yes, can you please go to your first slide, please?
Sure. The first lot, you mean the first shadow?
I think the first one that had the picture of the homes with the old building and with the proposed building.
Understood.
The first. Yes, this one. So I'm trying to understand exactly what you are saying. So please bear with me. So the current building, 2-story building, is about 10 feet from 1, 2, 3, 3.5 homes. So 1/2 of the 4th home, and then the 5th home, which is mine, and the 6th home, basically have nothing in front of them. So I can understand by moving your building 60 feet away. Is it 60 feet or 60 yards? I'm sorry.
67 feet.
Feet away from those 3.5 homes, that you will be able to get the same shadow. I mean, that's basically, I have a degree in physics, so I understand physics, optics, light. But I have a hard time understanding how it's physically possible to have the same shadow for the 2.5 homes that currently do not have a building in front of it. And I just can't understand that. Just because your software says so, I just don't understand that. Basically, by putting a building there, you're blocking our view, 2.5 view. And every time you have a building in front of another home, it seems to me that there should be more shadow. So what are you really saying? I mean, if you say 1, 2, 3, 3.5 homes get the same shadow, I understand, but I just can't wrap my head around the claim that the remaining 2.5 homes are getting the same amount of shadow. Can you please just help me there? I just cannot understand that. I live in this house. I can actually verify. I'm looking out my window onto Lincoln Street. I can see all the way to the park. I have no obstruction of view. Then once you put your building there, you're telling me that I will have the same amount of shadow as I get now. So I just cannot understand that. If you can please, you have any explanation for that? I mean, I'm literally looking out my window and I can see people walking at Civic Center Park. And then when you put in the building there, I can't imagine it not producing a shadow or some sort of obstruction of view.
Are you in one of the 2 buildings that are in the white area with our building showing? The roof lines are white rather than gray?
White rather than gray?
One of these?
Yeah.
We are, I see what you're talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I would say 1, 2,
this one?
4, 5, 6, 5 and 6. Yeah, these two. Yeah,
Well,
exactly. One.
Let's relook at them again because we may be casting more shadow on 6 and 7. But let's look at it, run it high.
Okay, so if you count from the left side of the page, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the fourth home is where the current building is kind of blocking half of the view.
Yeah.
So starting from the fourth home, then you have the fifth home, the sixth home, and the seventh home, which is sort of, you know, a little bit ways away. It's facing the church. So we're talking about half of the fourth home, the fifth home, and the sixth home. My home is the fifth home, so I can't understand how I would be getting the same shadow from your building, which is basically going to block my view, versus the same two-story building. I basically, I have no shadow right now. I can tell you for sure. So
yeah, neither at this time of day, there'll be, oh, there's no shadow in the morning at all?
No, you can come look at it here. I mean, again, this is what I'm saying is all along we are experiencing these things, and these are the type of things that we're sensitive to and we're careful about. I'm telling you, we don't get shadows, period. This building is so far away from us that the shadows don't even extend as far as our homes, at least the 2.5 homes over here. And I'm willing to invite somebody within my house and for them to measure and, you know, improve their models, because I mean, all of these things are based on models, and you have a little bit of, I do modeling all my, you know, life, modeling phenomena, nature. So it's very possible that the models are, I mean, it's understandable if the models have inaccuracies. There's no perfect model in the world, but I just find it very, I find it extremely puzzling that your model will produce the same amount of shadow on my home, and I don't see it. I just don't see it. I'm happy to.
Kayhan, I think you're referring to the existing building here.
Yes.
And as of right now, in the model, it does not show any shadow casting on your home. And you
That's
are
right. That's right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so I find the statement, I mean, with the statement that you make about the first 3.5 homes, 1, 2, 3, 3.5 homes, I can understand, because you're moving the building from 10 feet to 50 feet or 60 feet. So I can understand that part, but then I can't understand why you would say that my home and the homes around me are not being affected by the shadow. So, you know, that's I think you understood what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. We have not been fully accurate. We're half accurate. Half of the, and I apologize because I went over and looked at the houses at the time date, but I did not go in through the chain link fence and look at the other side.
Yeah, anyways, I think I got my answer. Basically, yeah. I do not, as far as it pertains to me and my 2 neighboring homes, I don't think this data really portrays the actual facts on the ground. And so it is a, you know, another one of my objections.
I guess to balance it a little, the shadow in the post-noon time period cast by the buildings on your site and the buildings to the west of your site create shadow in the afternoon from about 3 o'clock on, I would say, depending on the time of year.
Are you talking about this condition?
Your backyard would be in shadow at about 3 p.m.
Right, this is about 3 p.m.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can see there will be a shadow, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Joe, is your point being that at approximately this time of the day, that the single family homes will start projecting shadows onto our site?
No, I think our site, we understand that, are not concerned by it, but I'm balancing that we have added, it appears that Kenyon is right. We've added about 3 hours of early morning shadow, 2 hours of early morning shadow in the spring. No, 2 hours in the winter and 3 in the spring. But by 10 o'clock, the entire build, all of those homes are out of shadow.
Okay.
And they remain out of
with
shadow.
all due respect, my home is the most impacted home. My and my neighbor's home are the most impacted. I mean, throughout that ordeal that we had, and going forward, there's also something in your environmental report where my home is designated as a red home as far as the number of cancer-causing agents or particles in the air. So, I mean, I'm extremely troubled. And I think if you were in my shoes, you would be too. Having this magnitude of issues, it's not just the shadow, but it's also, the pollution and the toxic agents coming from, equipment operating there. And I've actually pointed it out to Debbie. I hope she has been able to share it with you. But, there are some serious issues here remaining. And this is, of course, one of them. But anyhow, I think you probably know about all of this. But
we believe that as the environmental impact report state, we met the cancer-causing elements can be mitigated and will be mitigated, and the construction taking place all over the Bay Area has the same issues, and those mitigations have been, significantly effective over the years.
Yeah, and I've pointed out that, of course, it's easier said than done, but these models and these mitigations are not perfect, and industrial accidents do happen, power losses do happen, equipment malfunctions do happen, and people get affected. And many years down the road, there will be a story about how the water got polluted in some area and people got, started developing cancer and whatnot. So being in my shoes, I think that it's hard for me to accept that. So I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
I do.
Nothing personal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayhan. We have Jamie.
Hey, so I was looking at your shadow model rendering. So I see that you are looking at when the shadow leave the house, and you're saying that it's just a little bit later than a day with the proposed building. I think you should be looking at what other houses are getting more shadow. I mean, what other new houses are getting shadow with the proposed building versus the existing situation. Not just like the time it leaves the house, because I see that's what you're evaluating, but you're not looking at what new houses are getting shadow. Like, for example, Keyhan's house was not getting shadow at the existing building on the left side in your rendering, but in the right side of the rendering with the proposed building, it's getting shadow.
And we'll make that correction before we appear before the Planning Commission.
Yes, you need to make this as a finding, because it makes sense that more houses will be getting shadow because your building you have more building toward north. So the houses at the north side of Trident Court should get more shadow. Right?
Yes, I agree. And we'll modify our presentation and our statement so it reflects that.
Yeah, okay. So Debbie, can you do a follow-up on that? The shadow study should be added to the environmental review.
Do you mean on the city's website? I'm not sure what you mean, Jamie.
And how would you add that to the the initial study? Would that be would there be a revision?
The environmental excuse me, sorry, I have a tickle. It has already been looked at in the environmental document that it would, and I think we addressed that last time in the meeting, that it was determined that there's no threshold. So there's not, that we don't have an established threshold.
Okay,
and
for the title study. Okay.
Right.
I got it.
Thus there was not a significant impact.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. All right. That's fine. Okay. I'm done.
Great. Thank you for your comment, Jamie. Next, we have Sunil.
Hi, hello again. So just want to make sure that are you, since this is the first time I have seen that you have accepted some inaccuracy. So other than that, at least that is a good start that you are accepting inaccuracies. So far in our experience, you have been completely like pretend transparent, I will say, not transparent really, pretend transparent. So just want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Neil. That is all the hands that we have. Debbie, I believe this concludes our session here.
Yes, and the next meeting will be the Planning Commission meeting on August 2nd, where this project will be referred to the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council. Notices are actually going out tomorrow in the mail, so you should be receiving those. I'm sure by Monday it'll be a dual notice. I'm specifying the Planning Commission date and the City Council date. And let me tell you what that will be. The City Council date will be September 27th. So there's only this one meeting notice. As I said, it's a combined meeting notice. So Planning Commission, August 2nd. That's a hybrid meeting.
August 3rd, I believe. August 3rd.
What?
The Planning Commission is on August 3rd.
Oh, hold on. I'm sorry. Yes, you are so right. City Council's on August 2nd. I apologize, everyone. August 3rd, Wednesday, and it is at 6 o'clock. It will be a hybrid meeting, which means you could either participate by attending in the council chambers or by Zoom. And the link to the Zoom meeting will be on the agenda of the Planning Commission hearing. And you can submit comments up until, if you want them to be made part of the record for Planning Commission's consideration before Wednesday of next week, they can be made part of the record. Otherwise, they will be post-agenda items and will be provided at the Planning Commission meeting. So anybody has any questions, they could email me or give me a call. My contact information has been made available. I'd be happy to discuss any matters. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your participation again and all the questions that you have asked throughout the process, and the focus on the specific issues to be addressed. So with that, I'll say good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.